Hey, what's happening, Wargamers? It is Leland coming to you with another painting video here. Been a little while since I've done these, but I got a little bit of inspiration, so we're going to get to work on some stuff. So what we're actually going to be doing is I'm going to start off with a small series of videos geared towards what this painting has always been about, and that is getting your models to pass that 2-foot rule. And by the 2-foot rule, I mean getting your models to look good from 2 feet away, so when you get them on the table, they're going to look fantastic, they're going to look great, and you're going to be happy with them. So these are very much designed for newer painters or painters who are starting to build up their confidence. So these aren't meant to be like the be-all display-winning videos or painting tips or anything like that. These are just meant to get people painting and get things on the table. So what we got here is we're going to be using Terriana Palos here for the Sisters of Battle. And this particular video, what we're going to be doing is we're just going to be taking a look at the purity scrolls, purity seals that are going on here. And I'm just going to show you a quick way that you can paint them up so they're going to look great at 2 feet and help get your overall army completed. So with that in mind, let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to start off with a little bit of the Rakarth flesh. I like this one right here because it has sort of that parchmenty look to it, but at the same time it still maintains a little bit of warmth to it. It's not too cold, not too warm, and it's not quite just a dry brown look to it. So it has a lot of components I like. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take a little bit of the Rakarth here, and I'm just going to get my palette in. We're just going to get it down there. And depending on the consistency of your pot of paint here, you're probably going to want to thin it down just a tiny bit. So we're just going to get some water there, thin it down, just so it's flowing nice and smoothly like so. And once that's done, what we're going to do is we're just going to take a look at the purity seals here, and we're just going to go over any of the actual parchment part of it here. And now, of course, you always want to be careful. You don't want to go too much onto the rest of the model. But as you can see, this is creating a nice starting coat for it. And one of the nice things about the Rakarth flesh is that it takes a lot of different shades and colors really nicely. You can actually do a lot with it, as far as like getting it to where you want color wise. It is probably one of my favorite colors that GW puts out there, just because of how useful it is. So what we're doing is just getting as much coverage on there as you can get, just filling it up here, and that's going to create the base. So right there, sorry, new setup here, just trying to get used to it. So I got the top layer set up right there, so I'm just going to get the bottom or the underside of it coated, and we're going to move on to the next step. So we've got the parchments painted on there, and as you can see, plenty of parchment on here, and it's coming out quite nicely, and it's enough that we're starting to get some idea of what it's going to look like. Okay, so the next step we're going to do here is we are going to grab a trusty wash that everyone makes use of here, and I seem to have slightly misplaced it, so I'm going to go grab that. So next up, we're going to grab the trusty Agrex Earthshade here, and as a lot of people know, this is commonly referred to as Talent in a Jar because it is just so nice. So what you're going to want to do is get a nice, generous helping of the Agrex. Don't worry too much about it being too much here. Let's just adjust that light a bit here. Because what you're going to want to do is you're just going to want to apply it in such a way that you actually get a healthy amount of shading here. And there is another step to this. So don't worry about getting too much on the model itself, especially considering that as it's wet, you can still make sure you get those places that are pooling up. You can get that sort of mopped up and redistributed pretty easily. Yeah, so as you can see right there, like there's a big bit of pooling right there that we're going to want to try and take care of. Otherwise, it might spoil the look a bit. So let's get rid of that. And in order to get rid of that, what you can do is you can just sort of wipe your brush clean a bit. And, oh geez, I'm having some light issues here. You can wipe your brush clean a little bit and just use it to kind of mop it up a bit. There we go. And just keep going through and just apply it generously, because you want that sort of deep shade. And one of the things we're going for here is we're going for kind of a higher contrast. Basically, because at 2 feet away, you're gonna want the highlights and the colors to really stand out, because you want them to pop, right? You want everything to be kind of noticeable at that 2-foot rule. So there we go. We're gonna let those washes dry a little bit. We're gonna work on this lighting issue as well, I think. But we're gonna let those dry, and then we're gonna move on to the next step. So now that the wash is dried on that, we're just going to get up nice and close here. You can see that we got those nice dark recesses in there. It's kind of tinted everything. So what we're going to do is go back to our Rakarth flesh right here. And we're just going to go over the highest points of it. So let's just get that here. And once again, get it on there. And just water it down a little bit, thin it down. Because you don't want to be dealing with too much here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to go over some of the highest points here. So mostly right around the edges. And you can start to see where the color starts getting built up a bit. So there we go. So just like that. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go over all these, and I'm going to show you the final result in just a second. Just kind of quickly coming back to it, actually, just to kind of give you an idea what you can really do to kind of just get the highlights going nicely on it. And let me just get this to focus here. Is, even just a little bit of edge highlighting. Just build up the edges, build up the raised areas of it. You don't have to be perfect, although you want to try and not get in the recesses of it too much, because you want to have that shading from the Agrex to come through. But what you can do is just build up the edges, and you'll get sort of that, you'll start seeing that contrast appear between the light and the dark, and you'll start noticing that it really starts popping at a distance. Next up, we just want to take that parchment color just up one more step, and what we're going to do is we're going to go to Pallid Witch Flesh for that one. Now, Pallid Witch Flesh is, you don't really need to thin it down too much, because it's generally a pretty thin paint to begin with. So let's just get that to focus there. And what you're going to do is you're just going to go basically along where you want the brightest points to be. So in this case, just going to choose some of the edges here, some of these raised highlights. And in this case, less is very much more. You don't want to go too heavy on it, simply because at that point, you're going to get more of the Pallid Witch Flesh as opposed to the other colors. So basically, you just want to really accent the highest part. So you can go along some of the edges here. And just, go until you're content with it, but at the same time, don't go too crazy with it. So as you can see, I'm being very, very deliberate here. I'm just hitting some of the raised edges, hitting some of the corners. And you'll notice that it starts really pulling the contrast between the light and the dark. And this is going to be a way that once it's done, it's going to show up really nicely on the table. And it's just a couple really simple steps. So just building all that up here. And the last little bit is just this thing right here, this parchment. Just building it up. Nothing too fancy. And make sure that it's more than just the edges you get. There's a couple raised parts in here that you want to get as well, just to kind of show the highest points. So I'm just going to put the brush down here. And let's get the light. So there you go. You can see that, we have that really nice stark contrast. And you don't have to worry about blending it too much, because once again, at the 2-foot range, you just want it to sort of stand out. You want people to clearly see what it is you're working on. Okay. So we got that done. The next step, what we're going to do is we're actually going to do something for the Purity Seals itself. Now in this case, because she already has the red power armor, we don't want to go with the red, because that's going to blend everything in a little bit too much. So in this case, what I'm actually going to do is we are going to play around with a purple. So we're just going to take some of this Phoenician purple, and we're just going to grab our detail brush here. Make sure you don't have too much on there because you don't want to overload the details. And just hit the purity seal, hit the wax part of it with the color. So right off the bat, you can see that the purple actually stands out nicely against the red of the armor. And this is something else to always consider when painting your purity seals, because I know that the standard is sort of that red waxy look, but there is nothing that ties you to the red waxy look. I actually like to play around with some other colors every so often, like Screamer Pink is one that I like using, or even just playing with some washes to get some different effects. But as you can see here, the purple just really helps it pop a little bit more, and it really assists that whole element of painting for the 2-foot rule. And it breaks things up a little bit. So I'm going to touch up the details, and we're going to move on to the next step. So now that we got the seals base coated, what we're going to do is we're just going to choose the next color up, and we're just going to grab a little bit of the Genestealer purple here. Now, another color you could work with if you want is you can always go with a paler purple as well. Daemonette Flesh is a really nice one for that, because it has sort of the gray undertones for it. But in this case, we're just going to go with a little bit of purple, just to kind of keep with everything. And much like when we were dealing with the parchments here, we're just going to hit the topmost parts of it. Because again, you don't want to overwhelm the color, you just want to accent it and get that contrast going. So the nice thing is if there's just a little bit of paint on your brush, you can just sort of gently edge it over, and it's going to do the details on the model are going to do the job for you. So you can see there I actually went on a little bit too heavy. So that is on me. But what we can do is just got a little bit of purple still back here. So we're just going to fix that up a bit. And then we'll just go back to the Genestealer purple here. And just build it up. So there you go. So just a little bit of highlights there. And what you can actually do is you can even bring the colors down a little bit by hitting it with a wash. In this particular case, if you go with sort of I wouldn't say a purple wash, wouldn't be the way to go, but you can hit it with some wash to bring down the colors a little bit, just bring up the actual the tones a little bit more. Something like a Reikland Flesh shade or even an Agrex. And what they'll do is they'll just go into the details and pull it down a bit. But anyway, there we go. There is a quick method for getting your purity scrolls to look good at 2 feet. You get a force of these down on the table, and they're going to look really solid. And if you really want to challenge yourself, you can even go one step further, get a nice fine detail brush, and put in like little squiggles for writing on there if you're feeling creative or anything like that. I personally don't do that because at 2 feet, not a lot of people realize it. Anyway, there we go. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Leave some comments below. I always like to hear from you on this sort of stuff. Let me know what sort of content you want to see. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and happy wargaming.